Hey guys. Alright, so I'm in my jammies to get my hair up. This is gonna be fun. Alright, we are in chapter 4, A Wedding in the Woods. Oh, I'm excited. I don't know who this is about. Okay. Alex spent the following afternoon on the grand balcony of the fairy palace. She leaned on the railing, and gazed at the beautiful sights around her. Everywhere she looked, she could see fairies of all shapes and sizes preparing the palace and the gardens for the inaugural ball. Every flower bloomed a little bit brighter, every pond rippled a little bit clearer, and every bird's chirp was just a little bit merrier. The whole kingdom was buzzing with excitement for the hall, except for Alex. A year ago, Alex wanted nothing more than to live with her grandmother in the land of stories. Just the idea of learning magic and becoming a fairy seemed like a stretch, but here she was, days away from being introduced into society. Hello, as a new member of the Fairy Council. It was more than she could ever have wished for, and more than she had ever wanted or thought possible, maybe even more than she could handle. After defeating Esmia, the evil enchantress, she had proven herself capable of leading the fairy tale world, and perhaps still hasn't proven it to herself quite yet. A large shadow eclipsed the balcony, and Alex looked up to see Mother Goose and Lester descending from the sky above. "Hey, kiddo, I've got something to tell you," Mother Goose called down. Lester had landed on the balcony, and Mother Goose dismounted and joined Alex at the railing. "What is it?" Alex asked. She eyed a questionable sack of gold coins Mother Goose had clutching to her side. Mother Goose cautiously looked around the balcony to make sure no one was in earshot. "Now, don't tell anyone you heard this from me, but I just ran into some friends of yours in the dwarf forest," she said. "What are you doing in the dwarf forests?" "I was playing my weekly card game with a few of my gambling buddies, but that's not the point." Mother Goose had held her sack of coins a little tighter. "I bumped into Jack and Goldilocks, and they had some very exciting news to share with me and wanted to pass it along to you." "Oh boy, maybe I now know." "What is it?" Alex asked eagerly. The last time she saw Jack and Goldilocks had been the night that Bob had proposed to her mom at the charming palace. She had always wondered what kind of mischief they had been up to since then. "Apparently, they're getting married," Mother Goose said. Alex clapped her hands. "That's incredible news. I guess Jack popped a question while they were out, or while they were in combat with a gaggle of the Corner Kingdom soldiers. He said that he knew it would make Goldilocks swoon." Which is probably right. He proposed during battle. That's hilarious. When are they getting married?" Alex asked. "This evening, just before dusk in the dwarf forest." "Talk about short notice," Mother Goose told her. "They decided it would be best to do it with a little notice as possible. You know how cautious fugitives get about their whereabouts. They asked me to officiate the ceremony and pass along the invitation to you." "Well, that is short notice, but I wouldn't miss it for the world," Alex said happily. Was suddenly happy that her grandmother was forcing her to take the week off. "But where in the dwarf forests?" "They told me to meet them in the clearing just south of the dwarf mines," Mother Goose said with a shrug and an eye roll. "I don't know why they would want to have their wedding there. Maybe all the swamps were booked? Anyways, the guest list is very exclusive. Only a few people know it's even happening, so keep it to yourself, and especially around here. You know how judgmental these fairy folks can be when you try to have a little fun now and then." "That's so exciting," Alex said. "I can't wait. I think a wedding is just what I need to distract myself from the inaugural ball business." "Tell me about it," Mother Goose said. I still am good for it. The last time I officiated a wedding, Puss in Boots drank all of the bubbly and started playing the fiddle, and a cow convinced everyone that he could jump over the moon, and an enchanted dish ran off with a spoon. You know it's a good party even when the china gets a little hanky-panky. But I'll tell you more about that another time. Mother Goose hopped aboard Lester, took his reins, and they flew back into the sky. Alex was thankful to have something to think about besides the inaugural ball. She left the fairy palace a good hour or two before dusk to meet Cornelius so that they could have enough time to travel to the dwarf mines. However, when she went in to meet him in the field just outside the gardens, an even greater distraction was waiting for her there. "Hello there," said a smooth voice Alex wasn't expecting. She stopped in her tracks. Across the field, near the edge of the stream, she saw Cornelius lying on his back and Farmer Robinson's boy rubbing his belly like a kitten. "What are you doing here?" Alex asked and placed her hand on her wand. She couldn't be too sure what his intentions were. I hope you don't mind the intrusion, the farmer's son said, walking closer to her. The truth was, Alex didn't mind at all, but she wasn't sure. She wasn't about to let him know that. How did you find me? I didn't. I found your unicorn, he explained. He wasn't hard to pick out. I assumed if I found him, I'd eventually find you again. Alex had to assess the situation twice. First, as a fairy, she assumed that the boy whom she had recently helped out was probably seeking her help again. Second, as a 14-year-old girl, hearing that a cute boy wanted to see her made her blush. Well, here I am. What can I help you with? Alex said collectively. Well, I don't need your help with anything, the farmer's son said. I just wanted to thank you for what you did at our farm. My father hates fairies, especially when they want to help us out. But I know deep down inside he's grateful too. Alex nodded. You're very welcome. Wait, what's your name? My name is Rook, he said. Rook Robbins. It's very nice to meet you, Rook, she said. And you never have to thank me. Helping people is what we do best. Now, if you'll please excuse me, Cornelius and I are have somewhere to be. Wait. Rook stepped between her and Cornelius. Before you go, I have something I wanted to ask you. What's that? She asked. Rook looked at his feet and kicked a rock between his feet. Well, the truth is, you're different from the other fairies that I've ever met. You're not all sparkles and bubbles, and you aren't afraid to get your hands dirty. I really like you, and I've been thinking about this an awful lot since I saw you at the farm. Oh boy. Alex felt her heart start to beat a little bit faster, but she ignored it, not wanting to get her hopes up. Where was he going with this? You can say no, and I would totally understand, but I was wondering, would you like to take a walk or something with me sometime? Rook said. He was scared to ask the question and terrified to hear her answer. Alex stopped completely. She stopped breathing. She stopped thinking, and she was pretty sure that her heart stopped beating. She forgot about everything on her mind. The fairy inaugural ball, Jack and Goldilocks' wedding, her name, who she was, where she was, and everything else important. All she could think about was the attractive boy in front of her, his floppy hair and his hazel eyes, and how he wanted to take a walk with her. With every second, Alex stayed quiet. Rook's face fell a little more into a frown. That's all right. I understand, Rook said. You're a fairy and I'm just a farmer's son. I should have known better to even have asked. He started to turn and head out of the field, muttering how stupid he was. No, wait, Alex said, barely regaining her control of her senses before it was too late. I would love to go for a walk with you sometime. Rook jerked his whole body back toward her. You would? He said with a goofy grin. Well, that's splendid. And the two stood silently for a moment with giddy smiles frozen on their faces. When will you be free? Rook asked. Is tomorrow evening good? Same place, same time? That would be wonderful, Rook said. I'll meet you in the field tomorrow. I'll look forward to it, Alex said. Enjoy the rest of your day. Wait. What's your name? My name is Alex, she said. Alex Bailey. Rook was smiling from ear to ear. Then I'll see you tomorrow, Alex. He jogged off into the forest with a confident jump in his step. Alex finally understood what people meant when they said they had butterflies in their stomach. She felt a jittery tingling sensation sweep over her whole body as if 1,000 butterflies were migrating inside of her. A huge smile appeared on her face. Cornelius got to his feet and walked to Alex's side. He blew a gust of wind in her face and bared his teeth with a flirty smile. Oh, stop it, Cornelius, Alex said. We're just two people who decided to go on a walk together, that's all. It's nothing more than that. Cornelius neighed. Alex wasn't fooling anyone, especially herself. This was a much bigger deal than she wanted to admit. Oh my goodness, the wedding! We better get going or I'll be late, she said. It's crazy how time flies when you're... And then Cornelius patted his eyelashes and sighed, teasing her to no end. No, we're running late, Alex said. Alex climbed onto Cornelius's back and the two headed toward the dwarf forest as the sun began to descend. Galloping across the land at Cornelius's magically enhanced pace made the trip go by fairly quickly, and the thoughts percolating in Alex's head seemed to go by much faster too. After all of the tribulations she and her brother had gone through in their very young lives, until this moment, Alex had never had any headspace to think about boys. She always assumed one day she would need to meet somebody and fall in love, but as she got older, it just never dawned on her that one day could be getting closer. And now she couldn't help but ask herself if this is the moment had finally arrived. Was Alex at the beginning of her own classic love story, or just entering a stage of adulthood? Was she about to experience romance for the first time in her life, or just a mild case of puppy love? Did Alex even want to be invested in someone like this, so early in her life, or should she put all of her energy into her fairy training? So many questions. She couldn't believe how much excitement and mystery one boy had brought into her life so quickly. Was it too early to say she was enjoying this newfound excitement? Would it even lead to more exciting experiences? Could Rook Robbins, he, be the love of her life, or would he just be with the other boys in her future? And if there would be others, did that mean that Rook would break her heart? Alex knew she, of all people, needed to protect herself. She had been working too hard to let a silly boy come in and ruin everything she had achieved. She couldn't let him hurt her, distract her from her goals, and most importantly, if things went askew, she couldn't let him turn her into something or someone she wasn't. She couldn't let anything turn her into Esmea. Since he had caused her head to spin in so many directions just by asking her to go on a walk, she realized how deeply that experience might affect her. The purer the heart, the easier it is to scar, and Alex's heart was as pure as they come. Alex, get a hold of yourself, she whispered under her breath. Just because you're a 14-year-old girl doesn't mean you need to think like one. He just wants a walk, not marriage. Thankfully, before she could overanalyze the situation to death, Alex and Cornelius crossed into the dwarf forest. It didn't matter how old or powerful she had become. The thick and dangerous woods of the dwarf forest always gave Alex the creeps. These woods were home to some of the worst memories and to some of the worst creatures that lived in the land of stories. She guided Cornelius up one of the only paved paths in the territory and followed the sign that pointed the directions of the dwarf mines. Just before they reached the mines, a spacious clearing came into view. The clearing had been staged like an outdoor chapel. 24 logs had been positioned like bench seats facing the front, where a large boulder stood like a pulpit. Carved into the pulpit were the initials J and G, surrounded by a heart. That's so cute. Go find some grass to eat, Cornelius, Alex said as she hopped off the unicorn. I'll come get you as soon as the wedding is over, but don't go too far. Those woods aren't exactly unicorn friendly. Cornelius trotted over to the other side of the clearing while Alex looked for a place to sit. She was one of the first guests to arrive. A man in a thick, curly mustache and thick, heavy black cloak sat in front near the pulpit. A witch who was missing her left arm and most of her teeth sat at the very back with a small troll that had gray skin and large horns. Sitting in the center of the makeshift chapel was a woman Alex had could pick out in any crowd. She was sitting alone, wearing a large fluffy red coat that covered most of her body, a tiny red hat with a matching feather that perched on top like a very stylish blonde updo, and she wore a pair of round glasses with red lenses in an attempt to conceal her identity. She glared at the people and creatures around her, anxious about being in their presence. Red, it's so good to see you, Alex said and took her seat beside the queen. I wasn't expecting to see you here. Shh, Red said and pressed her finger against her mouth. Keep your voice down. I don't want anyone to know who I am. Hey. Oh, you're fine. Alex looked at her like she was joking. You're trying to hide in that outfit? Well, forgive me, but I didn't know what a proper attire was when a fugitive wedding in the woods, Red said and hid her face deeper in her coat. I wouldn't be here except for Charlie talked me into it. Look at the characters around us. Where did Jack and Goldilocks meet these people? A child's nightmare? Where is Froggy? Alex asked. She couldn't spot her formerly cursed friend anywhere in the clearing. He's in the woods somewhere with Jack, waiting for the wedding to begin. He's Jack's best man, Red said. Oh, that's adorable, Alex said. Who's Goldilocks' maid of honor? Goldilocks gave her an irritated snort she didn't mind the other guests hearing. Clearly, it was a sore subject. The horse is. Of course. Porridge, right? Alex had to bite her lip to keep from laughing. I suppose that makes sense, Alex said. She and Porridge have been through a lot together. You two, on the other hand, have always had a, how do I say this, teetering relationship? Yes, it's always been very give and take. I give and she takes, Red said. But we made up once she gave me back the diamond necklace that she stole from me. She thought it was just a joke. I thought it was an act punishable by death, blah, 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 but we reconciled and here I am. Well, that's good news, Alex said. So how are you doing, my dear? How is your grandmother and everyone in the fairy kingdom? Red asked. Shimmery, as always, I imagine. Alex let out a long sigh. Everyone is getting ready for the big fairy inaugural ball coming up. I'm officially going to be part of the fairy council and part of the happily ever after assembly when it's over, Alex said. She hesitated to bring up another major subject on her mind, but figured there weren't too many people around. Too many people in her life that she could talk to her about with this. And I sort of met a boy. Red did a double take and yanked off her glasses. Her big blue eyes grew even bigger as she had a crooked smile stretched across her face. A boy? Red said loudly, and the topic obviously so exciting that she couldn't even be bothered to worry about disguising herself anymore. Tell me everything. Where did you meet him? How old is he? How tall? What class? What race? What species? Alex had definitely been remembering all these questions. He's the son of a farmer in the Eastern Kingdom. He's older and taller than me, and as far as I know, he's human. For now, she said, trust me, being involved with someone who has been cursed to live on and off as a grotesque creature put a strain on the relationship. But he sounds very, very promising. I love a good working class man. What's his name? Rook Robbins, Alex said, and she couldn't help but smile just mentioning his name. I can tell you really like this boy, Red said with a raised eyebrow. Alex sighed again as she felt the butterflies reappear in her core. I'm not sure I'm even ready for all of this, she confided. I have just so much on my mind these days. I'm not even sure it's a good time to add a boy into the mix. I keep worrying that it may turn into something something really special or really awful. And to be honest, I'm not sure which one would be worse. Oh, Alex, you need to relax and just enjoy the moment, Red said. You only get a first love once. And what's the worst that could happen? I could get my heart broken and take my aggression out on enslaving the world like the Enchantress did, Alex said matter-of-factly. Well, that's a tad extreme, Red said, but you're nothing like her, so you have nothing to worry about. Who's to say I'm not? Alex asked. This is the first time something like this has ever happened to me. If I'm not prepared enough going into it, then I might be scarred for life. Red placed a hand on her shoulder and smiled warmly. Goodness gracious, guys. The first cut is always the deepest, but not every cut leaves a scar. She had said, if you spend your whole life worrying about getting hurt, then you aren't really living. You don't want to shield yourself so much from the bad stuff that nothing good gets to you either. Meeting up with a cute boy who likes you isn't going to hurt you. Thanks, Red. That is really insightful, Alex said, a little bit surprised that Red had so much knowledge on this subject. Well, if it's one thing I know a lot about, it's first loves, Red said. Then again, when I was 14, I ruined 2 lives trying to be with the boy that I liked. So I'm not sure how good the advice I'm giving you is. There's a thin line between love and insane, and I've crossed it many times. But looking back, had I not experienced all those awful things, I never would have met Charlie. So in the long run, it was all worth it. They smiled at each other. Red was probably the closest thing to a big sister Alex could ever have. Red had spent years of her life chasing after a boy that she could never have, and yet here she was today, happily supporting him at his wedding to another woman. Red had come a very long way, and if Red was overcome heartbreak, then Alex figured she could too. So, when do you see him next? Red asked. Tomorrow evening, Alex said. We're going for a walk. Oh, how adorable. I've always wondered what poor people do on their first dates. She's evil. Red said, I miss you, or I insist you stop by my castle tomorrow before you see him. We can talk about boys and I can help you pick out an outfit. Are you sure you wouldn't mind? Alex said. Aren't you too busy being queen of your own kingdom and all? Oh no, I'd be delighted, Red said. I just love having this silly little meeting in the House of Progress, I just have this silly little meeting at the House of Progress, but you can come with me and then we can chat about it during all the boring parts, of course. What's the House of Progress? Alex asked. Surely she hadn't, must have heard her incorrectly. Didn't I tell you? Red said. It's just this place that you were telling me about from your world, the one with all the representatives? Congress? Alex asked. Yes, that's the one. I decided to copy it. I have a representative from each neighborhood in the Red Riding Hood Kingdom that helped me keep up with all of the decisions. That way, every decision is well-rounded and I won't be solely blamed for everything that goes wrong.
But Congress sounded so dreary and bleak. I wanted my House of Representatives to sound promising and uplifting, so I thought Queen Red Riding Hood's House of Progress had a much better ring to it. There was movement in the trees around them. They could hear several people approaching the clearing from different parts of the forest. Speaking of ring, I think the wedding is about to start, Alex said. Like clockwork, as the sun began to set in the horizon, the remaining wedding guests emerged from the trees around them. Each guest was shadier than the next. There was an ogre covered in yellow warts who sat in the seat in front of them. He was followed by a woman with bright red eyes who knew she was the witch in the back, and sat beside her. A rugged dwarf led a blind dwarf with 2 eye patches to a seat near Alex and Red. A goblin couple with green scaled skin sat near the front of them. A woman covered in maroon robes sat close to Alex and Red. The only part of her body that was exposed was her beautiful green eyes. She seemed friendly enough, but like Red, Alex didn't want to make herself too known in this environment. Red looked to the sky and took deep breaths, trying to fight off the anxiety of the newcomers that was causing her. A loud swoosh made Alex jump as Mother Goose swooped down from the sky on Lester's back. They landed to the front of the clearing, and Mother Goose took her place behind the large pulpit. She took a big swig of her flask that she had hidden in her hat and cleared her throat before starting the ceremony. "Hello, ladies, gentlemen, and whatever the rest of you are," Mother Goose said. "We understand a lot of you here are right on a tight schedule, being on the run from the law, and have tried to eat or kill each other in the past. So let's all make this celebration as short and sweet as possible to avoid any discomfort. Let the wedding begin." The crowd cheered, which was an interesting combination of hoots, hollers, and growls. Jack and Charlie, the man forever known as Froggy to the twins, appeared from the trees behind the pulpit. They both wore sharp dress shirts, looked handsome and charming as ever. Jack looked as anxious as Red about being there, but in a good way. A series of thumps came from the back of the clearing, and Alex turned to see the white and brown spotted foal walking down the aisle. He held a basket of rose petals in his mouth and was breathing very heavily, blowing the petals out of the basket and scattering them across the ground with every exhale. "That's adorable. Who is he?" Alex whispered to Red. "That's Porridge's new son. They call him Oats." Not too long after Oats had reached the front of the clearing, his cream-colored mother trotted down the aisle behind him with a bouquet of daisies in her mouth. Once she joined her son and the others at the pulpit, she quickly chewed up the flowers in her mouth and swallowed them. "Everyone, if you still have legs, please stand for the bride," Mother Goose asked. The guests stood and turned to the back of the clearing. Red stayed seated until Alex pulled her up to her feet. A flock of sparrows perched high on the trees began to sing a beautiful ballad as Goldilocks appeared. She was stunning. She wore a simple but elegant white lacy dress with a long train. She was barefoot, and her golden locks of hair flowed all the way down to her waist. Wild flowers had been wrapped around the handle of her sword as she carried it down the aisle like a bouquet. It was beautiful but lethal, just like Goldilocks. Despite all the gruesome guests, no one could deny that the ceremony had turned out to be beautiful. Goldilocks arrived at the pulpit, and she and Jack faced Mother Goose with tears of joy in their eyes. "Well, sit down already," Mother Goose ordered the crowd. Once they obeyed, she continued officiating. 407 years ago. Oh, whoops, wrong speech, sorry. "Dearly beloved, we are gathered who knows where today to celebrate the joining of these 2 wanted fugitives." Mother Goose turned to face Jack. "Jack, do you take Goldilocks, a woman charged with countless burglaries, breaking and entering, and running from the law? Don't forget attempted murder," Red called from toward the pulpit. "I wasn't going to," Mother Goose said. "And attempted murder, to be your lawfully wedded wife, in sickness and in health, in arrest and imprisonment, until death do you part." There was no question in Jack's mind. "I do," he said with the biggest smile that he had ever been seen with. Mother Goose turned to Goldilocks. "Goldilocks, do you take this man, a national hero whose reputation you single-handedly ruined, to be your lawfully wedded husband, in sickness and in health, in arrest and in imprisonment, until death do you part?" Goldilocks never looked so happy in her life. I do, she said. Well, in that case, let's get this thing over with, Mother Goose called out. With the power semi-entrusted in me by the Happily Ever After Assembly, I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss the... But before she could permit it, Jack and Goldilocks locked lips, and the whole crowd of guests cheered wildly. Once they were done kissing, they climbed astride Porridge and galloped down the aisle and off into the sunset with Oats following closely behind. Mother Goose snapped her fingers and a sign magically appeared over Porridge's back that read, "Just married." Watching the wedding had somehow made all of Alex's fears and doubts about taking a walk with Rook go away. She wanted to be as happy as Jack and Goldilocks one day and didn't care how many emotional obstacles she had to go through to get there. All right, now everyone get out of here before I'm seen with you, Mother Goose said. And to that ogre in the back, you still owe me 17 gold coins from our card game last week. I haven't forgotten. All of the guests disappeared into the forest as quickly as they had appeared. Froggy joined Alex and Red at the center of the clearing and gave Alex an enormous hug. Hello, Alex. It's always wonderful to see you, he said. Lovely wedding, don't you think? It was beautiful, Alex said. Don't you think it was beautiful, Red? Red didn't respond. Her arms were crossed and she was still frowning in the direction of Jack and Goldilocks had ridden off in. Darling, what's wrong? Froggy asked. Didn't you enjoy the ceremony? I did. Red said unconvincingly, especially the dress, because it was mine. She stole it from me. And then is the end. Chapter 5 is Insight at the Gravesite. Oh boy, what's that going on? All right, guys, till next time.